Hello everyone, and thank you for watching this video. And in this video, me and my friend Iwan we are going to dive into the world of literary linguistics. Specifically, we will be looking at the first 5 chapters of Lee Child's debut Jack Reacher novel, The Killing Floor. As fluent readers, we often take for granted how easily we follow who is speaking, where an object is happening, or what object a pronoun is pointing to. But for beginner or language learning readers, navigating a fast-paced thriller can be a cognitive minefield. In this presentation, we will analyze the various types of wavering expressions, such as pronouns, names, and descriptions, to understand how they function structurally, build suspense, and ultimately how they impact the comprehension of language learners. To begin our presentation, let's outline the core goals of our research and what we set to achieve. The next slide will be presented by my friend Iwan.
Okay, so right now we are diving into reference in Killing Floor, specifically focusing on chapters 1 through 5. Before we get into the details, let's look at our main purpose and objectives for these slides. There are 3 key goals we want to achieve today. First, our primary goal is to identify the different types of references used throughout chapters 1 to 5. And the second, we want to describe these references by explaining exactly how each type functions within its specific context. And finally, our ultimate aim is to support learners. We will provide clear, straightforward examples to help beginner English readers follow along easily. With that in mind, let's get started with our first point.
To analyze this referring expression systematically, we draw upon a rich lineage of pragmatic and linguistic theory. Our foundational understanding reference and inference is built on George Yost's in 1996 seminal work, which helps us explain how speaker or writer uses linguistics form to enable a listener or a reader to identify something. And for our classification taxonomy, we utilize Martin and Rose 2007 system of tracking participants, which gives us a structured way to categorize how identities are introduced and maintained across a text. And finally, we incorporate perspectives from David Crystal, 1992, and Deborah Schriffen from 1994. Their work allows us to account for the conversational context and real-world pragmatics that dictate how readers decode meaning in fast-paced dialogue. With this theoretical lens in place, let's look at the methodology we use to extract these findings from the novel.
Now, let's move on to the methodology. For this study, we are using a qualitative close reading approach, specifically analyzing the digital edition of the text. Our process follows 3 main steps. First, we identify the referring expressions in the text. Next, we categorize them into 6 distinct types. And finally, we examine the context and look at the necessary inferences required to understand them. It is important to note that we are not doing any statistical counting here. Instead, our complete emphasis is on providing clear, learner-friendly examples.
Let's take a look at the reference overview. So in this slide, we have outlined the 4 main directional and cognitive categories of reference, that we track throughout our study. The first one is anaphoric reference. This occurs when a word refers backward to an entity that has already been introduced. It is the engine of the textual cohesion. And the second one is cataphoric reference. This is the opposite. It points the reader forward, referring to an entity that will be fully named or introduced later in the story. And the third one is bridging reference. And here there is no direct lexical link. Instead, the reader must make an inferred connection based on an implicit relationship between a named object and a new element. The fourth and the fifth, also the last but not least, the exophoric and homophoric reference. So they are pointing outside the immediate text. Exophoric reference, for example, points to the situational context or an unknown entity, while homophoric reference relies on shared generic cultural language. So let's see how Lichal deploys these to construct his narrative. Let's start with the most common topic encountered, anaphora.
Okay, so next slides, let's take a look at some anaphoric examples, which are the most frequent types found in the text. The first type is pronoun chaining. For instance, consider this sentence: the officer with the shotgun came near. He screamed. Here, the pronoun he links directly back to the officer. The second type involves repeated definite descriptions. An example of this is the phrase "the Rosewood office." This description recurs throughout the text to maintain a stable location across the chapters.
This slide brings us to the tension between mystery and real-world grounding. Lichal uses exophoric reference to create immediate suspense. For example, when Jack Reacher finds a scrap of paper with the word pluribus on it, this refers to something completely outside the current text. The reader doesn't know what it is yet, creating an immediate narrative hook and driving the mystery forward. Conversely, he uses homophoric reference to ground the text in reality. References to Miranda, as in Miranda Rice, the President, or the blues musician Blind Blake, rely entirely on readers' real-world cultural knowledge. If a reader doesn't know who Blind Blake is, or what the Miranda warning entails, some contextual depth is lost. For language learners, these homophoric terms can be a major speed bumps. But reference isn't always direct. Sometimes the reader has to work a little harder to make a mental leaps. Let's look at bridging, cataphora, and esophora.
Let's explore how inference works through bridging, cataphora, and esophora. First, we have bridging reference. So look at the example. The shell cases were missing. This phrase infers a gun was used, even though a gun was not previously named. And the second is cataphoric reference. For example, the text mentions the fingerprint officer, followed by C, and then finally the name Roscoe. This setup intentionally draws readers forward. And the third is esophoric reference. This involves nominal group modifiers. For instance, the phrase "the town of Margrave Police Headquarters answers the question, which one? Right inside the phrase itself.
Analyzing this structure reveals clear pedagogical takeaways for supporting beginner readers. First, educators must teach students how to actively track pronounced change because reader's narrative moves incredibly fast. Keeping track of who is holding the gun, who is speaking, or who is being arrested requires a firm grasp of pronoun antecedent agreement. If a learner loses the chain, they lose the plot. The second one is we must encourage learners to embrace context to resolve bridging. When terms like shell cases appear, instead of pausing to look up every word in a dictionary, readers should be trained to look at surrounding contextual clues to infer the presence of implied elements like a gun. And third, we should acknowledge that cultural knowledge is a powerful comprehension anchor when teaching books like Killing Floor, providing a quick cultural briefing on things like American police procedures, regional geography, or historical blues figures can dramatically reduce cognitive overload, allowing learners to focus on the language itself. And with that, let's bring everything together to our final slides, starting with our major findings.
And last but not least, let's look at our conclusion and key findings. Our analysis successfully found all 6 types of references. Among them, anaphoric and exophoric references are the most prominent in the chapters 1 through 5. Each type serves a distinct narrative function. Anaphora tracks characters and settings. Exophora builds suspense. Meanwhile, homophora grounds the realism of the story. Ultimately, there is great learning value here. Teaching these specific patterns helps beginner readers follow the plot and infer meaning confidently. So that is from us, from myself, Iwan and Adli. And thank you for watching our presentation video, and hopefully this video informative and can helping you guys throughout your study. Once again, and thank you.